Hi, I'm Joe Polizzi, and this is the Content Inc. podcast. 5 minutes every Monday for content creators who desire to be content entrepreneurs. Hi, everyone. I'm very excited to release our second Content Inc. book tour interview. This means for the next 10 weeks, I'll be dropping a special Content Inc. episode on Thursday mornings. The Content Inc. book tour ran all through the month of May, mostly on the social audio app Clubhouse, with today's interview being with the great Ann Handley, Chief Content Officer at Marketing Profs and founder of the simply incredible newsletter ANNARCHY, and also a very large case study in the Content Inc. book. As you'll get from the interview, Ann and I have been friends for a very long time, and I can't tell you how much I respect her, what she's done, and what she's meant for the entire content marketing industry. Now, in the interview, we go over how Ann has built her incredible newsletter to over 50,000 subscribers in just a few short years. So here's the interview, lightly edited, and then I'll close it out at the end. Now, most of this is just Ann and I chatting, but Ann Ginn, editor at The Tilt, leads up the Q&A part at the end. Enjoy.
Hello, I'm off mute. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yes.
I'm sure you're in a wonderful sunshine mood today, correct?
Not so much, but Joe, I just want to say that this is how much I love you, and I will do anything you ask, because even when I'm on the first day after my second shot of Moderna, I'm having a Moderna moment all day today, and but I'm here for you, and I'm here for to have this conversation. So let's I'm ready to go.
We really did not plan that well. First of all, thank you for joining. Yes, I had the Moderna day after shot thing happen as well. So,
oh, did you?
So
Wow.
I know exactly what you're going through. So feels like 15 Coors Lights and somebody punched you really hard in the arm. All right. So we're gonna get started. I'm sure they don't want to hear us talking about Moderna arm, but hey everybody, thank you. Welcome to the room. My name is Joe Polizzi. I'm the founder of The Tilt, a newsletter for content creators, and the author of Content Inc., the business model for content creators, which is why we're here. You are a part of the Content Inc. book tour, which will be released later this month, believe it or not. And I'm very excited to have my old friend Ann Handley from Marketing Profs and the amazing ANNARCHY newsletter as our key guest today. Ann, of course, is a case study in the Content Inc. book, and she's going to talk about how she took her wonderful email newsletter from 0 to over 40,000 subscribers. And just a note to everyone today, I know we've got some people that'll come up for Q&A in a little bit. This is going to be recorded, so just be aware of that. I'd also like to welcome Ann Ginn and Laura Kozak from The Tilt. They'll be assisting me today with Q&A later today. And before, just to go through some housekeeping as well, I'm going to do about 30 minutes of questions with Ann Handley myself, and then you'll be able to ask Ann questions. That's where Ann Ginn's going to help me. So if you want to raise your hand whenever you're ready, Ann will bring you to the stage. That'll start about 30 minutes from now. And now the last point, if you would, we want a wonderful audience for Ann Handley today. She's battling second shot Moderna ills, and she's with us. So please share this out on Twitter so that we can have that amazing audience. Or you can hit the little plus sign at the bottom right-hand portion, and you can ask some friends through Clubhouse. We found that tweeting works better, but whatever. Okay, so we're going to get started. I'm going to do a little introduction of Ann. I've known Ann Handley for well over a decade. We actually can figure that out by the pictures we've taken at particular conferences we've been at together. Ann Handley is a writer, digital marketing pioneer, Wall Street Journal best-selling author, founder of ClickZ, chief content officer at Marketing Profs, owner of a tiny house, and author of the amazing Everybody Writes, which is a must-read. You have to absolutely get that. So, Ann, I'm going to set this up for you first. Welcome to the room. So many things we could talk about, but I'd like to focus on your amazing email newsletter, ANNARCHY. So what I'd love you to do, give us the 3-minute origin story of getting to that point where you made the decision to create the newsletter and why you started it in the first place.
Sure. Yeah. So, and congrats on the second edition of your book. Also, we're here to celebrate that as well. So, sure, a little bit about the newsletter, about its origin story, if you will. I guess I can't really talk about the current iteration of Total Anarchy, which I launched 3 years ago, this past January, without also talking about my deep experience in this space. I have always been part of email marketing, always built my businesses on email marketing. You mentioned ClickZ, my very first company. In 1999, we created one of the very first ever email marketing events. When we sold ClickZ in 2000, so like a lifetime ago, literally, we had 50,000 subscribers, like just 50,000 subscribers, which at the time seemed massive. And maybe for a lot of smaller organizations, that seems impressive, but remember that this is one of the primary digital marketing newsletters in what was the nascent space of digital marketing. So only 50,000 people. I mean, that's kind of crazy when I think about it now. We thought it was massive, but it was not so massive. Then I joined Marketing Profs as a partner, and I started the email newsletter in 2002. So I have a pretty deep history in email and in email newsletters. But why did I start email? Why did I start Total Anarchy? It's because there's really a convergence of a couple of things when I think back on it now that were happening 3 years ago. First is sort of the psychic satisfaction, right? I love creating things. I love building audiences. I love connecting with like-minded people. I've been building an audience since I was 8 years old when I started not an email newsletter, but a newsletter, a paper newsletter in my neighborhood, and I distributed it on my bike. And so I've always been a writer, and I've always used that writing to connect with audiences, even when I was a kid. But the further you go in your career, and this, Joe, as well as anyone, the more you sort of touch things less, right? So whereas I launched the email newsletter at Marketing Profs in 2002, and initially I was building the whole thing, I was deploying it, like it was all me, my fingerprints were all over that. But as my career went on and as Marketing Profs grew, we hired people to do all of the things, and I wasn't that person anymore. I wasn't touching things at all. And so I missed that sort of psychic satisfaction of making and building something. And I also as part of that too, I wanted to have fun. I wanted to have something that was 100% my own, that I would really just enjoy, it would have sort of, at the time, I thought there's sort of no business agenda. I just wanted the ability to have fun with an audience and to publish my own thing that was 100% mine. The second thing was to basically maintain my credibility. I'm a marketer selling to marketers. And so to have the kind of credibility that I felt like I needed to counsel them on what does it take to build an audience in the modern age. If I'm going to speak to audiences and I want them to trust me in my advice, I felt like I had to walk the walk, like I had to make that credible. So I wanted to speak from a position of experience and not just, here's some things that I think would work for you. Marketing, So that was the second thing. And then the third thing that increasingly was clear to me 3 years ago was that the rise of the email newsletter in general, right? We've heard this like every single year, that the email newsletter is dead or that email is dead. And of course, we know that that's not the case. I don't think it's ever going to be the case. But I think what's happened is that companies increasingly, big and small, are increasingly disrespecting that email newsletter. And I didn't think that they were using it to the degree that they could have been using it to connect with their audiences. I felt like a lot of brands were really missing that opportunity. A lot of companies use it as a distribution strategy. And so I wanted to figure out, could I crack the code on how to create an email newsletter that has real engagement with an audience? Could I also, embrace the fact that an email newsletter is an opportunity to connect directly with one person? It's the only thing that a person and not an algorithm is in control in marketing increasingly. And so that was the third reason. So psychic satisfaction, to sum up. The second thing was just to maintain credibility. And finally, just, the rise of the email newsletter in general, which I saw as really just a huge opportunity for so many of us.
Well, I think what's amazing about your going from zero to what do you have, 45,000 subscribers now? How many?
Just over 50. Yeah.
Oh, geez, it just keeps getting larger. Okay. Um, the, I think what's interesting is we talked to Mike Stelzner yesterday about his email strategy, and he uses his more as distribution. He wants clicks. You do
Hmm.
not do that. You're looking for opens, and that's how you look at it. You're having a relationship. So, it's a couple. I want to unpack a couple things in that. Your audience focus on audience strategy. So I want you to take the people through here what you think about when you sit down to write a newsletter. And then also probably would be helpful because yours is a rather long newsletter. So maybe what it is and then how you go about focusing on that one audience member to really get it right.
It's true. So when I think about writing my email newsletter, I mean, first of all, I publish the email newsletter every other Sunday, right? So every fortnight. I'm trying to bring back fortnight. If those of you here could really just help me out with that, I'd really appreciate it. So it's not biweekly because that can mean twice a week, or it can also mean every other week. So fortnightly means specifically every other week. So if you take nothing else out of this conversation, at least you know that now. So I publish it every other weekend, and that's strategic because, as you say, it's long. I publish it on a Sunday morning. That's a more contemplative time for most of us. It's a time when we are willing to maybe invest in things that I talk about in there. I usually tell a story about something that relates to marketing or writing or something going on in my life or any or your life. I also write to one person, and you sort of hinted at this a second ago, but I always think about one person who I am trying to help with my email newsletter. I don't think about the audience. I don't think about a segment. I think about one person that I had a conversation with, one person who is struggling with something or something that I heard on social media or I interacted with them on social media, somebody that I had a conversation with at an event, increasingly a virtual event. It could be any of those things, but I think about that one person that I'm trying to help, and that sounds a little bit, I don't know, cliche maybe in writing. You think, of course, you write to one person, yada yada, but it just it in my experience, most marketers don't think about that. They don't think about writing a letter to one person. So I don't think about the news component like Mike Stelzner does. I think about the letter. I think about my ability to connect with one person at one time. And so there's a host of ways that I sort of create that kind of one person intimacy. The way it's starting from just, the opening. Like I always throw in something kind of wacky and kind of fun, like Hi Sweet Petunia or something like that, as opposed to Dear Valued Subscriber or something like that. So I think it's my tone of voice and how I approach it and basically my goal for it, like who I'm trying to help.
So what just strikes me is so you've got 3 years, 50,000 plus subscribers, and you've not paid a dime for promotion, correct? This is all
Correct.
organic.
Yep.
Okay, I want to let everyone sink in with that and how rare a feat what that is that it's accomplishment. So congratulations for that. What are the best ways that you've used to build audience organically then?
Yeah, a couple of different ways. I mean, first of all, I do a lot of speaking, right? I do a lot of public speaking. I do a lot of virtual speaking these days. So it's through that. It's through, when I give a talk, for example, there's always a call to action in there somewhere about, if you like what you've heard and you want to hear from me, there's a fortnightly newsletter that I also publish. I'd love to, have a conversation with you there. So that's number one. The second thing is, podcast appearances, just being out there talking about not just email newsletters, but just marketing in general, just being visible. Number two, and using other people's platforms, so to speak. And I hate that word using, but you know what I'm saying, leveraging, I guess, other people's platforms to shine a light on what I'm doing. In my own newsletter. And then the third thing, and honestly, this has been the most successful, is referrals from existing subscribers. A lot of times I actually forget to like post it on social media. So the email newsletter goes out Sunday mornings, early in the morning on the East Coast where I live. And I forget that I should probably talk about this on like LinkedIn, or I should maybe share it on Instagram or something like that. And I forget, like half the time I don't even think about it. So in that way, I guess I'm a terrible marketer of my own newsletter. But the reality, Joe, is that a lot of my subscribers will share it. Like they share it on Twitter, they share it on Instagram, and which is I'm eternally grateful for. And why does that happen? I think it's because, it resonates with them. The other thing that I just wanted to mention, and we didn't really talk about this, but I think it relates to your question a second ago about how do you actually, build that relationship. It starts like right away with when someone signs up for my email newsletter, they get an auto response from me, right, which says like, thank you for being, my newest subscriber. Really happy you're here. What did you hope to learn here? What can I help you with? And that alone, like, it starts to set the tone. It sets the tone for how I write it, but it also, I think, starts the relationship on a really solid and honest footing. Because when, if you were to sign up and you were to respond back to me, if you were to tell me what you hope to learn here and what I can help you with, then I will respond back to you. And so I think that automatically sets it apart as something that people feel valued. I saw a stat not too long ago that only like 57% of brands send a welcome email to their subscribers, which is crazy to me, because think about your own behavior. Your enthusiasm for signing up for something is never going to be as strong as it is right at that moment when you finally give over your email address, right? And so trying to think about how can you create this sort of experience and start to set the tone immediately for how this is going to play out. The second thing is there's kind of a strategic reasons for doing that, and that's if somebody is like, if I say thank you and they respond back to me, it's more likely that anything from my address will not end up in spam. So that's there's a strategic reason behind it, in addition to the sort of relationship building aspect to it.
No, excellent. So real quick, I want to do a room reset. Hey, everybody. We got a lot of new people in the room. So you are discussing today Ann Handley's newsletter. And she's talking about all kinds of wonderful stuff. And if you want to ask some questions, you'll be able to do that in a second. But please, if you would, we want more people in the room. For those of you that weren't here at the beginning, Ann has had her second shot, Moderna shot, yesterday, was it, Ann? And anybody who's
Yes.
gotten the Moderna second shot should know that she is a trooper for being here. So let's please share it on Twitter or share it through Clubhouse. That would be wonderful. And then so we got another 15 minutes or so with just Ann, and then you can raise your hand and ask some questions. Just so
can I just
Go ahead.
set the scene for you, though, because in some ways I kind of wish this was audio, because I am literally in a Snuggie. I'm like, right, I have two fleece jackets on and I'm wrapped inside a Snuggie as well. So I'm looking real good right now, and I really do wish that this was.
Are you in your tiny office?
I am, yes, as a matter of fact.
So everyone can just picture this going on right now. Is there a fire?
No, I don't.
That would be the perfect. That'd be the perfect picture. Okay, so just a couple of logistical things. Do you do double opt-in on your emails?
I don't. No,
okay.
I do not. I've wrestled with that very question a number of times, because like anybody else who is building an email list, I get my share of just flat out spammers who sign up. I don't really understand that game, by the way, but I have to keep a pretty close eye on it. I've thought about doing double opt-in. I know it's the right thing to do, but I just I haven't implemented it, and so yeah, it's something that I actually do wrestle with.
Is there any tech component that you'd like a shout out for that's really worked well with you, so people know, or not? You don't have to. I just was wondering.
In terms of how I publish
it? your what you use, your email service or anything like that.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, I use Aweber. They've been a great partner for me, and I keep it very low touch. I write it, in just in a Google Doc, and then I put it into Aweber directly. There's, it's very simple, very straightforward. Because again, if my goal is to build this myself, and it's for me to, truly have that psychic satisfaction of doing it 100%, then I need to keep it light, and I need it in terms of technology.
So I remember when you first started this, and you said this was such a crazy idea and that it started to work. And what I'd like to know, and what I'd like you to share, is when did you know you had something? Like, what were the aha moments that you said, I really got something here, and what were those?
Yeah, it's funny that you said that, because I was thinking about our conversation today, and I was thinking about how, it's easy to hear my three reasons, like the three reasons that I gave you for starting it in 2018, and about, a little bit about my mindset, about how, the psychic satisfaction of creating, and I noticed the rise of email newsletters and yada yada. Like, it's easy to look back on that now and it all falls into place. But the reality is, when you're building something new, and I think any entrepreneur can relate to this, you don't really know. Like, it's terrifying, right? I mean, I remember when I launched it, when I go back now and I read those very early issues, I sound so tentative and so insecure because honestly, I didn't know that this was going to work. I felt a little silly because, here I am, somebody who has built my career on pushing digital marketing forward, and I'm publishing an email newsletter. Like, what? So I didn't know at first, like when I first started it, but I felt in my gut that it was just something that I wanted to do. And this goes back to, I just wanted to have fun. And I thought, all right, well, if nothing else, at least I'll have a good time doing it and I'll see what works and what doesn't. And if it doesn't work, then that's good to know too. So that's really how I approached it. I think it helped, by the way, that I didn't have anything riding on it, in the sense that I didn't think I was going to monetize it in any way. I didn't necessarily think that it was going to play into other things that I'm doing. I also didn't really understand just about how much it would really benefit me as a creator, would make me a more confident writer and all of that stuff. But to go back to your question, like, how did I know? I mean, honestly, it was when I was standing on stage at Content Marketing World. And I don't know if you remember this, Joe, but it was, God, I guess it would have been 3 years ago. And I told this story about starting an email newsletter. And so I started in January. This was September of 2018, I guess. Does that sound about right? Probably.
Yep.
Or yeah, September of 2018. And I remember, telling the story and feeling very, again, sheepish at, talking about, this amazing new thing, an email newsletter that I think all of us as brands and marketers and all the content marketers in the room should be paying attention to. And I remember feeling a little bit like, oh my God. But then I got off stage and I got such a great response to that I realized, okay, this is something, like, this is a thing. I mean, and it wasn't just signaled by the number of signups that I got, but it was just the conversations that I had with people. And that was the moment that I remember thinking, so this is a thing. This isn't just, me feeling like this is 100% an experiment. Right. I started to realize, I think that there's actually some lessons here, and there's some ways that we should be all of us should be thinking about that email space differently.
So now I know. Well, why don't you just talk about it? Revenue decisions. You and I have had discussions about this, and you're looking at ways to monetize. Where are you at with that? How are you driving revenue? Are you driving direct or indirect revenue? Can you go through the process with us?
Yeah. You and I had a conversation a couple of months ago, I guess at this point, about this very topic. And I am not deriving direct revenue from it. So, for example, I don't have a paid newsletter component, which is one thing that I thought about doing. I discarded that because I don't have the bandwidth for it. I don't have the time to do something like that, or I'm not selling advertising in it. So that would be, I guess, another way to make, to think about like a direct revenue platform, direct revenue source. So I'm not doing that either. I've opted to use it more indirectly. So, for example, promoting my speaking events, speaking opportunities, I've gotten, I probably should have grabbed that data before you and I talked, but let's blame Moderna. I have gotten a number of it basically keeps me in people's mind's eye, right? So I've gotten a lot of people who reach out to me after an email newsletter. Like, I just actually talked to somebody this morning who read my email newsletter from almost 2 weeks ago about gated content, and they hired me to come speak to their audience about gated versus ungated, and sort of what marketers need to think about. And so that's an example, I think, of, it's not direct, but the content that I'm publishing there is giving me fodder, and just even when it's not that specific, I just think being around, being available, demonstrating that I am thinking about this space maybe differently than a lot of people are. Like, it's been a good it's just been a good use of the email newsletter in terms of driving revenue for me. That's less direct. The second thing that I do is I have I don't want to say sold. I mean, I guess it's more about people have hired me to help them um, amplify things that they're doing, research reports, white papers, that kind of stuff. And so typically I'm very selective in what I'll offer to promote if I'm not part of it. So, but I have done a few of those. Again, it's like I almost hate to mention it because it has like I have to have a relationship with the company. I have to believe in what they're doing. Usually, I know the principles in some way or another. So I have to have a connection. So that is another way that I do it. But again, those are very, very select.
Well, I think that you and I talked about this. You've made decisions not to sell, and if you decided to monetize it in more ways, you could absolutely do
Mm-hmm.
it. You know that you just decided not to, and you're great in a great position. So wonderful, why not? But at some point, you could have a $500,000 newsletter if you wanted to. But we'll just move beyond that.
Well, yes, no, to your point, yeah, you're totally right. I could, but
Yeah.
I also, I run marketing profs. I have a full-time job. And so it's a little bit like, I'm not trying to build a content empire there. I'm not looking to, for example, launch a podcast from it. I'm not looking to do all of that.
Yeah.
Now, that said, could I do it? Yes.
Sure.
Might I do it someday? Maybe. But right now I'm good. So yeah, just monetizing it in a few small ways is good for now.
Awesome. Okay, so I want to ask one more question, and then we're going to get to Q&A. So, Ann Ginn, get ready. Anyone that wants to ask a question for Ann Handley, please raise your hand. We'll bring you up on the stage as many times as we can here. So, my question to you is not newsletter related, and it's more about people that want to be content entrepreneurs. So, what's some of the worst advice that you've heard lately given to entrepreneurs who are starting a newsletter or starting a content platform? What would you tell them right now about some of the advice that they're getting?
Oh, the worst advice, huh? Wow.
Or what would you tell somebody who wants to become a successful content entrepreneur? What should they do this week?
Number one, focus. Focus on, when we started this conversation talking about why an email newsletter, why now, that's really important to me, that to have that kind of focus, building that platform, building those relationships allows me, if I want to grow it in other areas, port it into different areas. But, I think you have to start with one platform, which again sounds very elemental, but I think it's just so key. Like you've got to start with one audience at one time, one platform. And the second thing is you've got to love it. Like you've got to love what you're doing. The reason why I didn't think about launching, say, a podcast is because first of all, I don't know anything about podcasting, but secondly, it's not a format that I connect with. I'm a writer and I enjoy writing and I love doing it. I would publish this email newsletter even if I had 3 subscribers. That's just the reality. And so, do you love it? And can you focus what you're doing to build one audience at one time through one platform?
That's great advice. And I have to say that I'm always excited by somebody who spells Ann correctly. So even though it gets confusing in this room, go for the simple from that. So thank you very much. And I think we will start with, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing, but Faisal or Faisal, do you have a question?
Yeah, hi, it's Faisal. Yeah, just going back to what Ann was talking about with regard to promotions, it sounds like we're kind of in a golden age of newsletters. There's just a ton of people doing them now. How does somebody start in terms of promotion? I don't really find too many avenues out there in terms of just trying to get the word out. Usually what people do is, for example, I'm a big, advocate of Twitter, and I'll see them send out links to just their newsletters and kind of hope that people kind of catch on. Are there any other things that you would do as far as trying to, especially if you're starting out, trying to, get started there?
Yes. First of all, I think number one, like you just said it, just hope. That seems to work out pretty well for all of us. I'm kidding. Like, I wish this was a video just so you could see my straight face with that. But no, beyond hope. I think again, this is a little bit elemental and a little of a cliched advice as well. But asking your existing subscribers to share it with 1 to 5 other people who you think would also enjoy it. There are ways that you could do that. Like, for example, there's lots of referral platforms out there who, you can sign up and they can help you incentivize subscribers. And Joe, I'm sure you could speak to this as well with what you're doing with your own newsletter. So there are ways that you can directly incentivize, but honestly, the best thing that I've ever done is building those relationships and asking other people to share it. And I know that it works because when I send that welcome email and I ask people, what do you hope to learn here? People tell me all the time, I'm here because, this guy mentioned you, because this person mentioned you in a podcast, because, I read about you in another newsletter, because somebody mentioned you on social. So all of that, like, it adds up, and it does start to over time build momentum. So that said, like, there's no magic bullet, like there's no one way to do it, and there's no fast way to do it, I don't believe. But Joe, I would love to hear your perspective on this too, because I know you've taken a slightly different approach.
Yeah, we've done a number of things. So with the Tilt in our newsletter, we're giving away our Creator Coin, Tilt Coin, for referrals. That's starting to get going. We're seeing some people do that really well, some people not. So we've got to get the word out on that. I think the other thing that I would do, and again, it creates a different level of subscribers. So somebody that shares Ann's newsletter that gets no more incentive than just they love Ann and love the newsletter, they're going to be a wonderful referral. Now, what we've done in a lot of cases is when to my personal newsletter, I would have people come in and I would give something away. I'd give a free book. I'd give a research report. Now, sometimes they just wanted those things and they get the newsletter too. So you don't have quite the open rate that you had. I know, Ann, you can share this in a second. You've got a great open rate. A lot of people, if you get them to sign up for whatever reason and some wonderful report, you're not going to get as high of a rate. So you have to take that into consideration. But I'm a big fan too, and I hate to say this because I'm not a Zuckerberg fan. Sometimes Facebook ads work. You can get, if you've got some amazing giveaway that's associated with your newsletter, you can get people to sign up. But again, those people do open at a lesser rate, so you have to be prepared for that.
Great advice there from that. I also think, Ann, as you were talking about people responding, and Joe's question earlier about the double opt-in, in effect, while not official double opt-in, you kind of have that on a personal level where you do get people who engage with you, which I think is pretty rare in the newsletter business for that. So
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, it's definitely not double opt-in, but it does start to build that relationship. And yeah, just to talk about what like offering some sort of like sign up incentive, like an ebook download or something like that. I've opted not to go that route because I want, just to Joe's point, like, I want the subscriber to not feel coerced in any way. So I don't put like lead gates, for example, on my website. I don't force people to sign up for stuff. I know it works for some companies. If you truly just want to build the database and you want to do it quickly, lead gates work. But it all depends on, what you want to build that foundational relationship on.
that makes sense. Okay, next up we have Evans. Welcome.
Thanks so much. And hey, Ann. Hey, Joe. Another fantastic topic. So, Ann, you're inspiring me to start a newsletter. I actually have an automated newsletter that's kind of lame, to be honest, because it is automated and kind of picks top topics from my Twitter feed. But it has a few hundred followers, and I'm getting inspired here to really up my game here. Any suggestions on the best platform to start? I'm seeing lots of good things or hearing about Twitter review, and also that LinkedIn sort of getting in the newsletter business in some way as a platform. Both of those platforms are sort of where my audience and my clients are. So any feedback on that, or how to take a curated newsletter and kind of turn it into something more meaningful? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Evan. Nice to hear your voice today. I'm not a big fan of using the platforms, the newsletter platforms that are offered by Twitter or by LinkedIn, or reportedly Facebook is building one as well. I'm not, and I don't think that Joe is either, so I'm sure he can chime in here too. But I think it's much more beneficial for you to 100% build your own audience and a list that you own. So, for example, yes, I have 50,000 people on Aweber, but those names are mine. Like that list is mine. And if I decide that I don't like AWeber anymore for some reason, like maybe say, maybe Facebook buys it. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. But
Be a good reason.
if that were to happen, I can port it someplace else, right? So it's I own that relationship with those subscribers. It's not owned by a third party, and so I'm very, very leery about building any audience on a social platform that you don't 100% own. Joe, you probably have thoughts on that too.
Yeah, I have a couple. I agree with you, of course, 100%. I guess it depends on what your goals are. I'm not a Substack hater, but I think that it's a hobby. I think if you're a content creator and you're going to Substack, you're not taking your content entrepreneurship seriously because you want to actually own that. And Substack is just like any other platform; they can change the rules at any time, maybe a little bit less than a Facebook would. So I would. Now I know Andy, our good friend of all of ours, Andy Crestadina, has created a LinkedIn newsletter. And he, in a very short period of time, I think like 6 months, he's gone from 0 to about 30,000 subscribers. For his goals, I know it's amazing. For his goals and what he's doing, he's using it as a marketing tool for his other things. I think that's really, really smart of him to do that. Now, me as a content entrepreneur, I don't want to do that because tomorrow LinkedIn might decide that they're not going to let you do that anymore and they're going to change the rules, which they always do. So that's what I'm afraid of with those platforms. And I'd rather go the harder way, the longer way, but the way that I'm going to build a content asset. And that's the way that Anne's doing it.
Yeah, and I mean the interesting thing about what Andy's doing too is, I have such respect for what he's doing, but he also has his own email newsletter as well. So that he publishes under his Orbit Media, just under Orbit Media itself. And so I don't think it's either or in his case. Like I think it's both. And if you're just mindful of that, like you could use it, and as long as you are also aware of the fact that ultimately you want to convert as many people as you can to your own stuff. And yeah, to Joe's point, I do think it goes back to your goals.
Thank you.
Thanks, Evan, for a great question. So just as a reminder to everybody, if you have a question for Ann Handley, please raise your hand and we will get to you in the next session. But next up is a content entrepreneur who we recently talked about in the Tilt of a great deal for his 3 clips. So we'll bring Jay to the stage.
Hey, I did not expect that intro. Thank you. Hey, Ann and Joe,
hey, Jay,
etc. What's going on? So I, as someone who loves notebooks and all things non-screen for my writing, and I know you and I have a bit of a kinship with that kind of thing, and I'm curious to hear, I think about your stories that you tell. They're unfolding in your backyard or your trips to Maine. They're not like grand, societally shaking, headline grabbing stories, but they're wonderful in their own right, but they're unfolding in the day-to-day. And so I'm wondering, if we set aside the tech and the silver bullets that everybody looks for, what are some of the things you value as a writer and a creator of this newsletter that benefits the newsletter that don't unfold with you staring at a screen? Like, I know you're very analog. Can I say that? No? I'll show myself out.
I think you just did.
What are the things that you value and you do around tech that has nothing to do with tech that then all of a sudden funnels into this thing that unfolds through technology, your newsletter?
So, like, where do stories come from and how do I collect them?
You might have notebooks. You might have a daily walking routine. Like, I imagine a lot of your creativity happens not enabled by a tool.
Yeah. I mean, yes and no. I mean, I think, first of all, I always am on the lookout for good stories. And I start every morning by writing longhand in a notebook, in an analog fashion, Jay, since now that's become a thing. And what I'm writing is not necessarily like, it's not like I'm a teenage girl writing in a diary and talking about my hearts and my heart and my love and my feelings. I'm actually just writing stories, like things that happened the day before, things that I think are kind of weird or funny that could be useful at some point. And so those stories that I document in my just longhand in a notebook become fodder for all kinds of things. Sometimes they appear in some form in the email newsletter. Sometimes it becomes a story that I'll use to wrap a talk around on stage. They come to life in all different, kinds of ways. I'm writing about something this Sunday that's been sort of knocking around in my head a little bit. Um, and it's about this. I actually brought it to life on Instagram. It's not even in my notebook. But last weekend, I was walking in the neighborhood, walking my dog, and I looked up and I saw a squirrel eating a slice of pizza in a tree. And I thought, that's like the most bizarre thing ever. And so I documented it on Instagram, just like that. Like, what is a squirrel doing in a tree? I have so many questions about this. Like, first of all, like, what kind of toppings are on that pizza? And like, how, did he order a single slice or a whole pie? But, most importantly, who delivers to a tree? Like, is it like Uber Eats, or like, who was that? Right. So it was sort of a fun story. Instagram stories, I find, is a good platform for me because they're visual stories, but I often will use it as a way to write a story right along with the visual, so to speak, it's just a format that I really connect to. So the more I thought about that, though, that was an Instagram story, it's up for 24 hours, it goes away. But the more I thought about it, I thought, God, that's like, there's got to be some sort of marketing analogy to that, right? There's got to be something about, you think the squirrel wants nuts and leaves, but what does a squirrel want? Pizza. So I mean, I don't know. I haven't quite figured it out entirely yet, but that's just an example that I'm sharing as a way that I think about stories and I think about, bringing them to life. And I do like the everyday. I mean, part of the reason why I do that, I tell very small stories about, squirrels, about things that's happening in my life, about, my dog. I mean, my kids, it could be anything. But the reason why I do that is because I have a fundamental belief that the smaller stories you tell, the more powerful they are because they resonate more broadly. And so that's, I just think that's kind of my philosophy about life. It's my philosophy about writing. And it's something that I always think about and try to do just as a creator.
That's great. Well, next up, Lauren, what's your question for Anne?
Hey, Anne. Hey, Joe. Lauren McDonald. Great show. Great to hear your voices. And I've got a question for you around format. So I have a newsletter I launched 4 years ago around the electric vehicle industry. And I've sort of struggled with kind of your format, the longer sort of letter that goes on and on and on versus kind of the shorter one with links to the blog, more links to the blogs and things like that. I just would love your thoughts on how you came to the kind of just going with the long form format versus a shorter one where you're driving people to your blog and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it does go back to your goals. And also, by the way, Lauren, it's really nice to hear your voice. I haven't heard your voice in like literally years. It feels like. So yeah, thanks for being here. I do think it absolutely goes back to your goals, right? You need to think about, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to let people know are you trying to drive traffic to your blog, to your site, or do you want to engage them there in some way? Do you want them to what's their customer journey essentially, and map that out, and how does the newsletter play into that? In my case, that's not what I want, right? Because, again, my work with marketing profs is a full-time job. If we were having a conversation about the marketing profs newsletter, it would be a very different conversation. But because we're talking about my own email newsletter and my own goals there, I want it to be self-contained. Like, I don't even care if people click through, really. And so I really want to just build that relationship, tell stories in there, and that I tell stories long form. I was a terrible journalist. They had to move me from news to features when I worked at the Boston Globe because I could not tell, I just could not fight my way out of a paper bag of telling a news story. I was just like, there were so many other interesting things to talk about. Like, I'm a storyteller at heart, And so what makes me a terrible news reporter is what makes me a good storyteller. And so that's what I'm doing in the email newsletter. Now, that said, when I think about the length of the email newsletter, I also try to be really mindful of the fact that people are reading this, yes, on a Sunday morning, probably, but a lot of people don't open it until Monday. And I know that from the stats. And I really try to be mindful of the fact that this is in their inbox and that they can click away in a flicker. And I want to make sure that, that they don't do that. So there's a number of things that I do there to make, 1,300 words not feel like 1,300 words. So subheads, white space, bullets, a sort of scroll magnet at the bottom. It's what I call my department of shenanigans. It's sort of something funny that's always at the very bottom. So there's a number of things that I do to make a long newsletter not feel like a slog, because I don't want that. And that's not the kind of writer I am either. So I want it to feel fun and engaging, and I want it to flow and not feel like, that you just read 1,000 words. I want it to feel like that was a fun ride.
Great. Thanks, Anne. Great advice.
I love that you're a writer versus the reporter, because that was my classic in journalism. Are you a writer or a reporter? And it's just two different perspectives. Neither's wrong. It's just two different perspectives when you go to execute. So
I know my editor at the Globe was like so generous with me too, because he was just, he said to me, he was an older guy he died a couple of years ago, and he said, "You are a terrible reporter." He just said that to me like flat out, just right to my face. And as I was like just about to like dissolve in a pile of tears, he said, "But you are a great writer and you're a very good storyteller. So we're going to try this." And he moved me over to features. And like, I'm always so grateful for that, because had I not had that person in my life, this is like, I think about this all the time, just in terms of the role that I play for other people too. But if I didn't have that person in my life telling me that, sort of guiding me, you are bad at this, but here's where I see a fantastic future and fit for you here. It just made a big difference,
And he probably never realized, fully appreciated it from that. But you're right. It's good to take forward from that. So
yeah.
Thank you to Tom for joining us, and we'll bring you up and what your question is.
Hey, everybody. Hi, Anne.
Hello.
It's nice to talk to you.
Nice to talk to you.
I know you've been doing your newsletter for 3 years now, but there's kind of a step zero in that, right? Which is already be Ann Handley. You've been working at Marketing Prof since 2002. I think you said, building an audience, so that you didn't really start from 0 with the newsletter. So my question for you is, if you could go back in time to 2002 and kill Sarah Connor, stop the robot apocalypse, but also give yourself advice on when and how to really start from scratch. Would a newsletter be the thing you would do? What advice would you give 2002 Anne from the real beginning point of this newsletter?
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. I did sort of show up with some kind of reputation, right? So I had already published 2 books. I had already written Everybody Writes. So I was already known as a writer / marketer. So yes, that's absolutely true. But when I go back to 2002, when I launched the first email newsletter at Marketing Profs, or even when I go back to 1999, when I was at ClickZ and we created, one of the first email marketing conferences, like all of that, I still believed strongly in the ability to connect with one person in one inbox at one time. And so I guess, my advice around that is just to just start there. I mean, it seems like, yes, I mean, the fact that I have been able to I have the privilege to talk to audiences all over the world, really, about the email newsletter, but that didn't start, that's only been really since the past decade or so. But when I go back to, my early years at Marketing Profs and ClickZ, starting an email newsletter then was it just felt like the right thing to do, because again, I've just been very strongly feeling like the ability to connect directly with one person at one time through that sort of letter format is just so key. I talked to an audience recently. It was about how to grow an email newsletter, sort of a meta thing. And I went back and found in one of the very first columns that I published at ClickZ, like so long ago. It must have been like 1998, I think it was. So, really long time ago. And I read through it, and I'm not like Tom. I could cover up, if I were to cover up anything, like the date on that piece, that if I were to cover up everything on it, and in the piece I was talking about how we were launching this sort of email marketing column at ClickZ. And if I were to cover up the logo, if I were to cover up the date, I mean, I would 100% subscribe to that now. Again, like I would write the exact same thing that I wrote then. I would write it now. I mean, yes, tools have evolved, and my voice has evolved, and the ability to, how I write has definitely evolved, and the ways you can grow an audience has evolved. But I think fundamentally, it's all there. The basics are still there.
Thank you. Tom, geez, did you pay somebody for that voice? Unbelievable. You should be on the radio. So
I should be on Clubhouse, Joe.
Oh, thank you, sir. That's wonderful. If anyone has any more questions, we've got about 10 minutes left. We're happy to get some more questions, and we do, absolutely. And you want to bring them to the stage? That would be great.
Hey, Joe. Hey, Ann. Long time no talk to.
Excellent. How you doing, Ken?
Doing well. So I got a question really for the both of you. Ann, I know you've got the newsletter, and I'm a recipient of both your newsletters and love them. But Ann, you've got a newsletter and a blog. Joe, you've got just a newsletter now. How do you sort of balance that story curation with, balancing having a blog or not having a blog with a newsletter?
Yeah, so I think about it a little bit backwards, maybe. I don't think about publishing a blog and a newsletter. I publish the newsletter as like my number one format. Like that's what I care about the most. Sometimes, though, when pieces really resonate in the newsletter based on sharing that I see, based on feedback that I get, a lot of people write back to me. Like when they get the email newsletter, they'll write back to me directly. It happens a lot. Like I'll get I don't know, at least 80 to 100 people writing back to me every other Sunday, just telling me what they thought or what they felt about, this email newsletter or what it reminded them of, like whatever story. So when I get a lot and I feel like it's resonating, then I sort of graduate the main story in that newsletter to the blog. So most of the things that are on my blog now are things that have already appeared in the newsletter, but it's the next iteration of that. And the reason why I do that is because I want it to live basically on my blog. I want it to be, crawled by the Google search engine, like all of that kind of stuff. But also I just wanted to exist outside of the email newsletter as a way to help people. And so I start with the email newsletter always. Not everything ultimately makes it onto the blog, but the ones that I find resonate the most, I do graduate to the blog.
Excellent. So real quickly, I want Ann Ginn to answer this for us for the Tilt. But when we started Content Marketing Institute, Kenneth, the e-newsletter basically was the blog. We had the blog. We send out the blog every day, and then if they got the direct email newsletter, or even with the email newsletter we had on the weekends, it was basically link abstract, and that's how we did it. Now with the Tilt, we're doing a completely different. And maybe you want to talk, and again, you want to talk about how we've structured that with the newsletter and then the blog post?
Yeah, happy to do so. So we structure it that you can read the whole newsletter and you never have to click on anything from that. Obviously, we include source links and all that kind of stuff, but you can get at least the snippet or understand the point for some of the shorter news items. And then for the longer news items, the original content that we're creating, whether it's a profile of a content entrepreneur or the news topic of the day, there's a longer version that you can click on and go to the blog. So you are still going to get a full story in the newsletter. You never have to click, but if you want to, you can go to the blog. And then obviously that helps from an SEO purpose and things like that it goes into. But it's really interesting. And it's actually a nice way to repackage content you're creating, write the full length thing, then just make it shorter and still keeping the point into it. So you can attract two different kinds of readers from that and give them options.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And by the way, I was Team Moderna as well. You'll feel better in about 12, 24 hours.
Oh, my Lord. Thank you. It's good to know.
Yeah, it's funny. It's right about that 24-hour mark. So I don't know. They've got some kind of timer with the whatever. We won't talk about that anymore. Anyways, we're all getting better. So Kenneth, thank you for the question. We've got about 7 more minutes left. I've got a few more questions to ask you, Ann Handley. I want to get your take on this because you have a creator coin, which is the word coin from Rally. I have a creator, we have our creator coin, which is Tilt coin. I want to get your take on why you decided to do that and what your plans are for your own creator coin.
So, I'm evolving that, Joe. I decided to do it because I believe in the concept. Jeremiah Aoyang, I know Jeremiah was here. I don't know if he is still here. I don't think he is. But Jeremiah and I had a conversation and he said, if you have a community, you can have an economy. And that just struck me as so simple and so genius. I launched the word coin because I first of all, I love the play in that. The rally coins have like a dollar sign in front of it, so it comes like you can read it as sword, and the sword being, the pen being mightier than the sword. I sort of love the wordplay of that. Number one, so that's why I chose word. But I also love the way that you can message that, as a marketer someday. Like for example, giving somebody your word, for example. I love that. I love that aspect to it too. So I haven't exactly figured it out 100% yet. Mostly what I am trying to do is figure out a way to get it into the hands of my community in a way that will inspire them to then pass it along to others. So I'm working on a few things and now just to try to inspire that. I don't necessarily want people to buy my coin, and I have no notion that I'm going to retire to an island in the Caribbean on this. Like that's not what I want, and that's not what I expect at all. But instead, I like the idea of having people buy word coins and paying them forward, basically, to other marketers or writers who are doing great work. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about right now. And also, like, again, just to have some fun with it, because I feel like everything that I tried to do, everything that's interesting to me it delights me in some way. My email newsletter delights me. And I like the idea of coming up with some programs for the word coin that will delight me. For example, my friend Carrie Gorgone, who has a coin with Chris Brogan for their backpack show, she was saying to me, you should basically offer like I do these hand drawings of people, right? You might have seen them just on social. I share them a lot of times when I'm doing when I'm like speaking at an event. I'll do like an analog drawing of I'll do analog slides, like where I draw them with Sharpies, and a lot of times I will draw the CEO. It's like I sort of joke that I'll throw in a CEO drawing with every talk. And so she said, you should sell those, basically those drawings of people. But what's interesting to me is like not just selling those drawings of like, say that I will draw you, Joe, or I will draw your like a friend or a favorite person or something like that, like Pam, for example. But I love the idea of maybe, ultimately having that flow through to a charity that you love. So something like that. I mean, if you're hearing what I'm saying is half baked, it's because it is. But those are ideas that are knocking around in my head right now.
Oh, that's perfect. I think we're all trying to figure it out, and I've got scribbles all over my desk trying to figure out the strategy. So we're getting there. Okay, we've got time for one more question. Dave, you're ready to go. You got a question for Anne? And I did put you on mute, so if you want to unmute, you're good to go.
Okay, thank you for that. Hello, everybody. Hello, Anne. Joe and Seth Godin usually say or ask the question that would people miss you or miss your content if you were gone? And you have obviously achieved that. Like people would miss you. If not, you wouldn't be that successful. What is your advice for people who are starting out and want to have that kind of content?
Yeah, I absolutely subscribe to that. And I notice my friend Carol is in the audience today too. And Carol is somebody who, when I'm a little bit late with my Sunday email, so for example, it usually goes out early morning on a Sunday, like 6:30 time frame, something like that. But on the occasion where I've had a lot going on and I just haven't been able to quite get my ish together to do it, Carol will always message me or email me and be like, "Where is it? Where are you? You okay?" So, there is that element for me. That's why I publish it every other week. I want to build that cadence with an audience. And I want it to be at a specific time. And so just having like that strong, that calendar for me, like, first of all, it makes me do it. Number one, like I'm not the kind of person that if I say, well, I can only write if I have something to say, which I know is how a lot of people do email newsletters. My friend Avinash Kaushik at Google has a fantastic newsletter, but he doesn't publish according to a schedule. Like he just publishes when he has something to say. That literally wouldn't work for me, because without that pressure of a deadline, I will just sit on my couch, eating nachos. I just would not do it. So there's always something better to do than write, because, that's just the way that I'm wired. So I love writing, but I will also find every excuse in the book to not do it. So yeah, the idea of scheduling it on a regular basis is really important to me. And now I've completely forgotten your question.
No, I think you answered it. I think
I think so too. Yeah. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thanks, Dave. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you. Joe, looking forward to our interview in 2 weeks. And thank you, Pam, for organizing this. Pam, you might want to tell Joe that he should follow you back.
I gave her the invite. So, I mean, come on. Do I have to follow
I've seen
her?
that. I've seen that. You're still not following her back. Same is true for Robert Rose. This is a disaster.
Well, I'm never following Robert Rose. That's just how it is. I'm not going to, he doesn't believe in NFTs, so I can't follow him for anything. All right. So thank you, Dave. We're up on the hour, and I promised Ann that we would keep this to an hour. So I've got some closing notes here in Handley. So why don't you just tell everyone where they can get the newsletter, where they can find more information about you, everything in Handley.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. You can Google me. I think I own the first page of Google, which I've worked hard to own. So I'm right there. My email newsletter is at annhandley.com/newsletter. You can follow me on here. You can reach out on Twitter. You can reach out on Instagram. I'm very accessible and would love to chat with any of you. And I really appreciate you, Joe, for giving me this platform and just for this conversation. And I'm honored to be part of your book launch.
Okay, it's just Joe again. I hope you enjoyed this interview with Ann Handley. So many great nuggets in there, but the thing I completely stole from Ann is her question she sends on the welcome email when people sign up for Annarchy. I can tell you firsthand how incredibly powerful that is to get this amazing feedback. I can't tell you how overwhelming some of it is. Simply by asking a question, and we can all do it. It's very easy to do. Also, I love how she has just one person in mind when she writes her newsletter. It takes buyer personas to a completely different level. Now, thanks again to Ann Handley for this wonderful interview, and join us next Thursday on the Content Inc. podcast for another very special interview and case study from the Content Inc. book. Good luck, and go out and change the world for the better.